The moment the words left her mouth, a switch flipped inside me. Not like a light switch, more like a circuit breaker blowing out, plunging everything into darkness. We were at the Sapphire Ball, the most exclusive charity event in the city. I'd spent 6 figures on this night minimum. The grand ballroom shimmered with crystal and silk, the air thick with the scent of expensive perfume and even more expensive champagne. Sarah, my girlfriend of 5 years, my beautiful, radiant Sarah, was beside me, wearing the custom-made gown I'd bought her, sparkling with the diamond necklace I'd given her for her last birthday. We were practically the king and queen of the ball, or at least that's how I felt. They called her name for the honorary award. Sarah had done some volunteer work with the charity's outreach program. Nothing major, but enough for them to recognize her in front of all these important people. I was bursting with pride. My girl, up there, shining. She walked to the podium, graceful and confident, my arm around her waist until the very last second. The applause was deafening. She took the microphone, adjusted it, and her eyes scanned the room, landing on me. She gave me a sweet, almost shy smile, the kind that always melted me. I braced myself for the thanks I deserved, the public acknowledgement of my support, my generosity, my unwavering belief in her. "I want to thank so many people tonight," she began, her voice clear and strong. "First, the amazing organizers, the volunteers, everyone who works tirelessly for this incredible cause. Standard stuff." I nodded, waiting. She continued, "And of course to the people who inspire me every day, who make me want to be better." My chest swelled. This was it. This was my moment. She looked out at the crowd again, and then her gaze shifted, not to me, to a table further back, where a group of her colleagues from the marketing firm were seated. My smile faltered. Her eyes met his. Mark. Just Mark. The guy she spent all her working hours with. The guy who made her laugh a little too easily during their daily video calls. The guy she always called her work husband. I'd hated that term from the first time I heard. A small, nagging irritation I'd always brushed off, told myself I was being ridiculous. But now, seeing her look at him in this moment in this public space, something inside me coiled tight. "And to my work husband, Mark," she said, her voice filled with genuine warmth, a touch of amusement, a private joke shared between them. "Thank you for always having my back, for the late nights, the early mornings, and for being the best sounding board a girl could ask for. You are truly one of a kind." She paused, a small laugh escaping her. And Mark at his table, he winked at her. A goddamn wink, right there, in front of everyone. In front of me. The air in my lungs just left. Who was I, the guy who paid for everything, the guy who organized her life, smoothed over every bump, bought her every luxury? Was I just the invisible wallet, the background noise to her sparkling life? She didn't mention me. Not by name, not even a passing nod to my wonderful partner. Nothing. Just a blanket, everyone who works tirelessly, and then specific, heartfelt thanks for Mark, her work husband. My vision tunnel. The crystal chandeliers blurred into a million angry pinpricks of light. The champagne suddenly tasted like bile. She finished her speech, accepted her award, and walked back towards our table, beaming, oblivious. She reached for my hand, her eyes still sparkling with the triumph of the moment. "Wasn't that great, honey?" she whispered, squeezing my arm. I pulled my arm away. My voice was a low growl, barely audible above the polite hum of the room. "Excuse me." I walked away from the table, not caring who saw, not caring about the puzzled look on her face. I went straight to the nearest deserted corridor, pulling out my phone, My fingers flew across the screen. I opened the banking app, navigated to her credit cards. Every single one. The platinum card I gave her, the one with no limit. The black card she used for her designer shopping. Even the joint account debit card. All of them. I hit cancel on each one. Instantly. Irrevocably. A cold satisfaction spread through me. It wasn't enough. Not nearly enough for the public humiliation she'd just dished out. But it was a start. A small, immediate blow for the massive one she'd just landed on me. She wanted to thank her work husband. Fine. Let him pay for her next designer gown. Let him take her to the next fancy gala. Let him be the one to pay for her life, her dreams, her everything. Because from this moment on, it sure as hell wouldn't be me. I stood there, breathing heavily, my chest still tight, with a rage so profound it scared even me. I looked at the confirmation message on my phone. All selected cards cancelled. Good. Thing good. Let the games begin. She had no idea what was coming. She thought a simple public thank you to another man, a man she called her husband, no less, was just a light-hearted joke. She was about to learn that some jokes come with a very, very steep price. The music from the ballroom drifted down the corridor, a beautiful, haunting melody. It sounded like a funeral dirge to me. The funeral of our relationship. Or maybe just the funeral of her privileged life, the one she'd taken for granted for far too long. I walked back into the ballroom, a strange calm settling over me now that the deed was done. I saw her scanning the room, a worried frown on her perfect face. Our eyes met. I didn't smile. I just looked at her, my gaze as cold and hard as the diamonds around her throat. She had no idea. Not yet. But she would. Oh, she would. The next morning, the calm I'd felt, after cancelling the cards, had solidified into a grim determination. I woke up early, before Sarah. She was still asleep, curled under the silk duvet, looking angelic. If I didn't know better, I would have thought last night was a dream. But the bitter taste in my mouth, the tight knot in my stomach, told me it was all too real. I went to the kitchen, made myself coffee, strong and black. The silence of the house was oppressive. It was a big house, one I'd bought for us, furnished for us, filled with all the things she loved. Now, it felt like an empty shell. Every expensive item, every piece of art, every designer cushion seemed to mock me. Around 9 o'clock I heard her stir. A few minutes later she appeared in the kitchen doorway, looking fresh, even in her oversized t-shirt. She smiled, a soft, sleepy smile. "Morning, sleepyhead," she mumbled, reaching for the coffee pot. "Long night, huh? You disappeared for a bit last night. I got worried." I didn't answer. I just watched her. She poured herself a cup, took a sip, and then her eyes widened slightly. She pulled out her phone. I knew what she was doing. Ordering breakfast probably, or maybe just checking her balance. I knew exactly what she would find. "That's weird," she said, frowning at her phone. "My card just got declined for my coffee order. Maybe I entered the wrong number." She tried again. Still declined, and my Amex is saying temporary hold. "What's going on?" She looked up at me, a puzzled expression on her face. "Did you freeze them for some reason? Like a security alert or something?" I took a slow sip of my coffee. The silence stretched. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. "No, Sarah," I said, my voice flat. "I didn't freeze them. I cancelled them." Her brow furrowed deeper. "Cancelled them? What do you mean cancelled them?" "All of them." She started frantically tapping on her phone, then looked at me, a flicker of panic in her eyes. "My platinum card is gone, my black card too. My debit card for the joint account isn't working. What the hell are you talking about? Exactly what I said, I replied. My voice still calm, almost unnervingly so. I cancelled them. All of them. As of last night, you no longer have access to my accounts or any of the cards I provided for you. Her mouth dropped open. For a moment, she just stared at me, speechless. Then a slow, hot flush crept up her neck, staining her cheeks. The confusion was replaced by a furious anger. "Are you out of your mind?" she practically shrieked. "What right do you have to do that? Those are my cards. You gave them to me. How am I supposed to pay for anything? My bills, my car payment, my rent, everything is linked to those cards." "They were never your cards, Sarah," I said, emphasizing the word. "They were extensions of my accounts. I paid for everything, and I have every right to remove access to my own money whenever I see fit." "But why?" Her voice was choked with disbelief, mixed with a growing fury. "Why would you do something so vindictive, so cruel? What did I do?" I finally looked at her directly, my eyes hard. "You stood on a stage at a gala I paid for, in a dress I bought, wearing jewelry I gave you, and you publicly thanked another man, a man you refer to as your work husband. You completely erased me from the picture. You treated me like I was invisible, like I was nothing." Her face crumpled. "Are you serious?" she whispered, the anger replaced by a kind of horrified astonishment. "You did this because I thanked Mark? My colleague? My friend?" "He's not just your colleague, is he?" I retorted, my voice finally rising. "He's your work husband. A term you use freely, a term you clearly enjoy. And you prioritized thanking him in front of hundreds of people, over acknowledging me, the man who provides your entire lifestyle. The man who paid for that very gala you were standing at. It was a joke," she cried, throwing her hands up. "It's a common term in the office. Everyone uses it. He's just a friend. A good friend who helped me with the charity work, which, by the way, I did on my own time. And I was thanking everyone who helped. Why are you acting like this?" "'Cause it wasn't a joke to me, Sarah. Not last night. Not when I saw the way you looked at him, the private wink he gave you. Not when I realized I was just your ATM, your personal sponsor, while your emotional connections were being formed elsewhere." Tears welled up in her eyes, but they looked like angry tears, not sad ones. "So this is your grand revenge? To strip me of everything? To leave me with nothing?" "You are not left with nothing, Sarah," I said, gesturing around the lavish kitchen. "You are in a multi-million-dollar house, in clothes I bought you. You still have your job, right? The one I helped you get connections for, by the way. My job barely covers my personal expenses, let alone a mortgage or a car payment," she yelled, her voice trembling. "How am I supposed to live? You just cut off my entire life support." "That's a harsh way of putting it," I said, though inwardly a part of me relished her panic. "Just means you'll have to learn to support yourself, like millions of other people do. You've had a good run, a very, very good run thanks to me." She stared at me, her eyes wide, a mixture of disbelief and pure hatred. "You are the most vindictive, cruel man I have ever met," she spat, her voice shaking. "This is emotional abuse, financial abuse. You are trying to control me." "Control you?" I scoffed. "No, Sarah. I am simply choosing not to be taken for granted anymore, not to be publicly disrespected. You want to pretend I don't exist in front of your friends and your work husband. Fine. Then I won't exist for you financially either. It's a very simple transaction." She turned, grabbing her phone, her hands visibly shaking. I can't believe this. I can't believe you. She started pacing the kitchen. Her voice barely a whisper now, as if trying to grasp the magnitude of what I'd done. What am I going to do? I have nothing. Literally nothing of my own. All my savings are in our joint account, which you just froze too. You'll figure it out, I said, my voice hardening. You are a smart woman. Resourceful, I am sure. You always told me you didn't need me for anything but love and companionship. Well, let's see how true that is now. Maybe your work husband can lend you a few thousand until you get on your feet. That hit a nerve. She stopped pacing and glared at me, her eyes blazing. You are despicable, she said, her voice dripping with venom. This isn't about Mark. This is about you and your need to control. You want me dependent. You wanted me to say your name on that stage so you could feel powerful. This is sick. I stood up, pushing my chair back. Believe whatever you want to believe, Sarah, but the cards are cancelled. Permanently. The locks on this house will be changed by noon. I suggest you pack a bag, or maybe call your work husband. I am sure he'll be thrilled to put you up. Her face was white. The implication hung heavy in the air. This wasn't just a fight. This was over, and she knew it. It wasn't always like this. 5 years ago when I met Sarah, she was a breath of fresh air. I was already successful, a self-made man, a tech entrepreneur who'd sold his first company for a tidy sum in my early 30s. I had the money, the cars, the penthouse apartment, but I was missing something. I was missing someone. Sarah was different from the women I usually dated. They were often ambitious, career-driven, almost clones of myself. Sarah was an artist, a graphic designer with a small, struggling business. She lived in a quirky little apartment downtown, rode a bicycle, and her idea of a fancy dinner was a good ramen place. She was beautiful, yes, but it was her spirit that really captivated me. She was vibrant, passionate, full of dreams that had nothing to do with corporate ladders or quarterly reports. I liked that. I liked feeling like I could provide for her, like I could open up a world of comfort and opportunity that she hadn't known. I loved watching her eyes light up when I surprised her with a weekend trip to Paris, or when I bought her a new set of expensive art supplies. She would never have splurged on herself. It felt good. It felt right. Early on, I encouraged her to focus on her art, to follow her passion. Her graphic design business wasn't making much, so I suggested she work less on the commercial stuff and more on her personal projects. I'd cover the bills. She initially resisted, proud of her independence. But eventually she agreed. It wasn't long before I was paying her rent, her utilities, her groceries. I saw it as supporting her dream. She saw it as a gift. We were happy. A year or so into our relationship, I bought the house. A sprawling modern mansion in the hills with a view of the city. I designed a studio space for her in it, a huge room with perfect light, expensive easels, and endless canvases. She was thrilled. She spent hours there, creating beautiful things. Meanwhile, my own ventures continued to grow. I started a new company, even more successful than the first. The money was flowing. I gave her her first credit card. It started with a single card for household expenses. Then, as her art wasn't bringing in much income, and she needed more for personal things, I gave her more. A platinum card, a black card. I encouraged her to shop, to travel, to enjoy the life we had built. Don't worry about the costs, Sarah, I'd say. Just enjoy it. You deserve it. And she did. She bought beautiful clothes, joined exclusive gyms, had regular spa days. She started looking more and more like the women I used to date, polished and refined. Part of me liked that, part of me missed the girl on the bicycle. Her career path shifted too. Her art wasn't making enough money to sustain her on her own. and she felt restless. So, I used my connections. I introduced her to a few friends in the marketing world. She landed a good job at a top firm, a creative director position. It was a step up for her professionally. I paid for her new work, wardrobe, her commute, everything. Even then, she didn't quite grasp the full cost of her life. Her salary was a fraction of her spending, but I didn't mind. I had it, and I loved her. Or so I thought. Then Mark came along. He joined her team a little over a year ago. She talked about him a lot. Mark said this. Mark thinks that Mark is so funny. Mark really gets my ideas. At first it was fine. Work colleagues. But then came the work husband jokes. She'd say it with a laugh, but it started to grate on me. My actual real-life partner, the man who paid for her entire existence, and she was flippantly calling another man her husband. It felt disrespectful. I brought it up once casually. Hey, honey, that work husband thing, it's a bit much, don't you think? She just laughed it off. Oh, don't be silly, everyone says it. It's just a joke. He's just a friend. You know you are the only man for me. And she'd kiss me and I'd let it go. But the seed of resentment had been planted. I started noticing things. The way she'd brighten when his name popped up on her phone. The long calls she'd take in the other room, always saying it was just work. The way she'd spend so much energy on him, on their work projects, on their shared jokes. I wasn't a jealous man, not usually. But this felt different. It felt like my position was being undermined. I was the rock, the foundation, the provider. And here was this guy, this Mark, getting all her attention, all her private jokes, all her laughter. He was getting the emotional intimacy that I felt was rightfully mine. The intimacy that I paid for, literally. I started to feel like an accessory. A wallet with a pulse. And then last night at the gala, it all came crashing down. The public slight. The blatant disregard for my feelings. My contribution. My very presence. It wasn't just a joke anymore. It was a declaration. A declaration that I was secondary. And that's when I knew. The support I'd given her, the lavish life I'd built for her, it had created a monster of entitlement. She didn't appreciate it. She expected it. And now she was throwing it in my face. So I decided to take it all away. Not out of jealousy, I told myself. Out of principle. Out of self-preservation. Because if she didn't respect me, then she didn't deserve my generosity. And the credit cards were just the beginning. Mark. His name alone brought a fresh wave of irritation. He wasn't overtly handsome. Not in the classic sense. Average height, sandy blonde hair that always looked a bit messy, glasses perched on his nose. He had an easy smile, a quick wit, and apparently a charm offensive that worked wonders on Sarah. She started working at the marketing firm just over 2 years ago. I'd pulled a lot of strings to get her that interview, used my network. The job wasn't about money for her, not really. It was about feeling productive, feeling like she had her own thing outside of me. I supported that, I truly did. But then Mark joined her team. At first, her stories about him were harmless. Mark and I cracked up at the meeting today. Mark helped me figure out this really complex client brief, standard workplace stuff. But the frequency of his name in her sentences started to increase. He became the benchmark for everything. If I suggested something, she'd say, "Oh, Mark thought of that, but we decided against it." Or, "Mark has a different approach." It was like a constant, subtle comparison. Then came the work husband tag. The first time she said it, it was in passing on the phone to a friend. "Oh, I am out with my work husband, Mark. We're grabbing a quick bite. My ears perked up. I asked her about it later. She just waved her hand dismissively. It's just a funny term, honey. Everyone says it. It means he's like my professional spouse, you know. We're partners in crime at work. We spend so much time together. We finish each other's sentences. I didn't like it. It sounded too intimate, too familiar. But I didn't press it. I told myself I was being paranoid. I trusted Sarah. She loved me. She chose me. Didn't she? But the jokes continued. She'd come home and recount stories about their inside jokes, their shared frustrations with colleagues, their late nights working on projects. She'd laugh with an easy familiarity that I rarely saw from her anymore. Not that she didn't laugh with me, but it felt different, more forced sometimes. With Mark, it was always genuine, free. It felt like she was truly herself with him. I noticed his name pop up on her phone at odd hours, late at night, early in the morning. Sometimes, she'd take the calls in another room, saying it was work stuff. Sometimes, she'd text him from the couch, giggling at her phone. I'd ask her what was so funny, and she'd just say, "Oh, just Mark being Mark," never sharing the joke with me, always keeping that part of her life separate, private. I saw the way he looked at her at company events. Admiration, more than just professional respect. And I saw the way she responded to it. A sparkle in her eyes, a certain flush to her cheeks. It wasn't blatant flirting, not exactly. But it was an undeniable chemistry, a connection that seemed to exclude me. I never accused her of cheating, not outright. I didn't think she was physically intimate with him. But emotional cheating? That was a gray area, and in my mind, she was treading dangerously close to it. He was getting the emotional energy, the private jokes, the daily connection that I, her actual partner, felt starved of. I was the one coming home to hear about his day, not hers. I was the one listening to her dissect their work dynamic. It felt like I was living with a woman who had a second, unspoken relationship, one I wasn't a part of. I felt like an outsider looking in. I'd walk into a room where she was on a call with him, and she'd immediately tense up, lower her voice. Or she'd end the call abruptly. It felt secretive. It bred distrust. I tried to bring it up again, more directly this time. Sarah, I am not comfortable with how close you are with Mark. And I really, really hate the work husband thing. It makes me feel disrespected. Her reaction was always the same. Exasperation. You are being ridiculous. He's just a friend. You are being insecure. You know how much I love you. Why are you trying to control who I am friends with? Control. That word again. She always threw that word at me. But was it control to ask for respect? Was it control to feel hurt when your partner prioritizes another man, even if just emotionally in public? I didn't think so. I thought it was a reasonable expectation. I thought it was basic human decency. The gala was the breaking point. Seeing her up there in the spotlight, a spotlight I had paid for, and she chose that moment, that grand, public platform to single him out, to give him the deepest, most heartfelt gratitude, to call him her work husband, not just to a friend, not just in passing, but in front of hundreds of the city's most influential people. And then the wink, the private, intimate wink. It wasn't a joke anymore. It was a slap in the face. A declaration. It wasn't just about the credit cards, it was about dignity, about respect, about feeling like I mattered. And if she couldn't see that, if she couldn't acknowledge my place in her life, then she didn't deserve the life I had built for her. Mark could have her, and he could have all the financial burden that came with her too. I was done being the silent partner, the open wallet, the invisible man. My anger wasn't about jealousy, I told myself. It was about self-preservation. It was about finally drawing a line in the sand, and canceling those cards was the only language she seemed to understand. The language of consequences. Let's be clear. I never intended to make Sarah dependent on me. Not in the beginning. It just happened. Or maybe I subtly steered it that way without realizing the full implications until much later. When we first started dating, she was fiercely independent. She paid her own way, split bills, insisted on contributing. But as my income grew, and as our life together became more intertwined, it became illogical for her to chip in for things like million-dollar homes or private jet trips. So, I started paying for everything. I bought her a new car, a luxury sedan, because her old one was constantly breaking down. I paid off her student loans. A surprise gift one Christmas just to take the burden off her. When she wanted to go back to school for a certification, I covered the tuition. When her art business struggled, I told her to just focus on her creative passion, and I'd handle the finances. She never asked for these things. I offered them, and she accepted them. Gratefully at first, she'd say things like, "You are so generous," or "I don't know what I'd do without you." I liked hearing that. It made me feel important, needed. Over time, though, something shifted. The gratitude started to fade, replaced by an expectation. Credit cards I gave her, initially for convenience, became her primary means of transaction. She stopped looking at prices. She'd buy whatever she wanted, whenever she wanted. Young clothes, expensive spa treatments, elaborate gifts for her friends, all on my dime. And I rarely said no. Why would I? I had the money, and it made her happy. We had a joint account for household expenses, but even that was funded entirely by me. Her own income from her marketing job, which was substantial by normal standards, but tiny compared to our lifestyle, she spent on personal indulgences. Her savings account, her retirement fund, all minimal. I'd suggested she invest more, but she'd just laugh and say, "Why bother? You've got it all handled, honey." That phrase, "you've got it all handled," it started to grate on me. It felt less like trust and more like an abdication of responsibility. She didn't just rely on me. She relied entirely on me. For everything. Her financial life was a direct extension of mine. I tried to talk to her about it once. "Sarah, maybe you should start contributing more to your own savings, building up your own nest egg." She looked at me, genuinely confused. "But why? We're together. What's yours is mine, right? And you make so much. What's the point of my small contribution?" She saw it as shared wealth, which technically it was for married couples. But we weren't married, and the imbalance was staggering. It wasn't 50-50, it was 99-1, and I was the 99. So when I cancelled those cards, I knew exactly what I was doing. I knew it would pull the rug out from under her entire financial existence. I knew it would leave her stranded, exposed. And a part of me, a dark, vengeful part, wanted that. I wanted her to feel the panic, the fear, the helplessness that she had implicitly placed on me all this time. I wanted her to understand what it meant to be utterly dependent, and then to have that dependence suddenly, violently severed. I wanted her to realize that my generosity wasn't an endless, unconditional tap. It was a privilege, extended to someone I loved and respected, and when that respect was gone, so was the privilege. Some might call it financial abuse. She certainly did, in her fit of rage. And maybe in a purely objective sense it was. I had deliberately created a situation where she was financially vulnerable, and then I exploited that vulnerability. But in my mind, it was a reaction, a consequence. She had disrespected me in the most public way possible, and this was my response. It was about restoring balance. It was about showing her the true cost of her actions. I had given her everything. Opportunities, luxury, freedom from financial stress. And she had, in my eyes, thrown it back in my face by elevating another man, a work husband, above me. So, I took it back. All of it. Cards were just the most visible, most immediate representation of that reversal. It was a power move, yes, a harsh one, but I felt powerless last night watching her thank Mark. I felt like a fool. And I was not a fool. I was the man who made her world possible, and she needed to be reminded of that. The dependence I had inadvertently created was now the weapon I was using to reclaim my dignity. It felt cold, calculated, and entirely justified. Let her see what her work husband could do for her now. Let him pay her rent. Let him pay for her next designer gown. Let him shoulder the burden she had so effortlessly, so ungraciously placed on me. After the initial explosion, Sarah tried to reason with me. She tried to explain. But her words just sounded like excuses, like desperate attempts to justify her actions and avoid the consequences. It was a figure of speech, she pleaded, her voice hoarse from crying. Mark is literally gay, you know that. We're just friends. He's like a brother to me at work. We support each other through stressful projects. My eyes narrowed. Gay or not, the term work husband was still offensive. And it didn't explain the special attention, the public gratitude. Gay or not, Sarah, you called him your husband. In front of a room full of people, people who know we're together, people who know I pay for your entire life. It was a deliberate slight. No, it wasn't, she insisted, running her hands through her hair in frustration. I was nervous. I was rambling. I thanked everyone generally. Then I just went to specific people who were right there in my mind for the charity work. Mark helped me a lot with the outreach program data and with organizing the presentation materials. It was just a spur of the moment thing, an honest mistake. An honest mistake. My blood boiled at the casual dismissal. An honest mistake that somehow neglected to mention the man who paid for the entire gala. The man who supports your every whim. You rambled your way into a detailed thank you for him. And a generalized dismissive thanks for me? I did thank you, she cried, tears streaming down her face again. I looked at you, I smiled at you. I said thank you to everyone who works tirelessly for this cause, and the people who inspire me every day. You were included in that. Included, Sarah. I scoffed. I wasn't a faceless volunteer. I was your partner. The main event, as far as I was concerned. I wanted to be acknowledged. Specifically, publicly. Just like your work husband was. She started pacing, her voice rising in desperation. This is ridiculous. This isn't about Mark. This is about you feeling insecure. You always need to be the center of attention, the hero. You couldn't stand that someone else got a moment of my gratitude on stage. That's not fair, I retorted. I'm not insecure. I'm simply demanding the respect I deserve. The respect you clearly have no problem showering on someone else. I am not showering him with anything. He's my colleague. My friend. You are turning this into something it's not. You are manipulating this to punish me for something completely innocent. Innocent. Stared at her, genuinely surprised by her lack of self-awareness. You think publicly calling another man your husband, and then thanking him profusely while ignoring me, is innocent. It was a throwaway line. It's a running gag. You are blowing it out of proportion because you are controlling. You want to own every part of me, including my friendships. You want me to be isolated and dependent. That last part hit a nerve. Is that what you think? I asked, my voice dangerously low. Is that why you've been relying on him so much? Because you feel controlled by me? She paused, looking away. Sometimes, yes, she mumbled. Sometimes I feel like I can't breathe. Like everything I do, everything I have, comes with your name attached. Like I owe you something for existing. Mark just feels like a friend who doesn't expect anything from me. A cold anger, different from the initial rage, settled in. So, this was it. All my generosity, all my provision, all the luxuries I'd showered on her, she saw as a cage. She saw it as a debt. And Mark, the guy who did nothing for her but listen and joke, he was her escape. He was the one who didn't expect anything. So you use me for my money and go to him for emotional support? I asked, my voice devoid of emotion. Is that it? That's the arrangement you thought was fair? She flinched. No, that's not what I said. I love you. I thought we were building a life together. This is insane. You are destroying everything over a stupid word. It's not just a word, Sarah, I said, walking towards the door. It's about what that word represents and what your actions represent. Now, I've given you enough time. Get your things. Or I'll have them sent to you. She just stood there, staring at me, her face pale, eyes wide with horror and something else, something I couldn't quite decipher. Maybe it was the dawning realization of the magnitude of her predicament, the gravity of being completely cut off, the sudden, brutal freedom she had apparently craved. I watched her for a moment, waiting for a final plea, a breakdown, anything. But she just stayed silent, frozen in shock. I left the room, the sound of her ragged breathing, the only thing echoing in the otherwise silent house. The next few days were a blur of cold efficiency. I called my lawyer, started the process of formally ending our cohabitation agreement. I had the locks changed on the house. Sarah had to ask her friend Lily to come pick her up. She left with a single suitcase, looking utterly defeated. I didn't hear from her directly for a couple of days. Then the calls started coming, not from Sarah but from our mutual friends. Lily was first. What the hell is wrong with you, Liam? Lily's voice was sharp, accusatory. Sarah is at my place practically catatonic. She says you cancelled all her cards, locked her out and left her with nothing. Is this true? She publicly disrespected me, Lily, I said, keeping my voice level. At the gala I paid for, she thanked her work husband and completely ignored me. Are you serious? Lily scoffed. That's your justification for literally ruining her life? It was a joke, Liam, a figure of speech. And she said she did thank you generally in her speech. Generally isn't good enough, Lily. Not when someone else gets a special heartfelt mention. Not when I provide everything. You are sick, Liam. This is emotional and financial abuse. You created a dependency, and then you weaponized it. You should be ashamed of yourself. I am ashamed of nothing, I retorted. I am ashamed that I allowed myself to be taken for granted for so long. Tell Sarah that if she wants her other belongings, she can arrange a time through my lawyer to pick them up. I hung up. Seft was David, one of my closest friends who'd been at the gala. He sounded more confused than angry. Man, what happened? Sarah looks like a ghost. I heard she's staying with Lily. Is it true about the cards? I explained my side concisely. He listened, silent for a long moment. Look, I get that it probably felt like a slap in the face, he said finally. But canceling all her cards, leaving her with literally no access to money, that's extreme, man. Seriously extreme. She has no idea how she's going to pay her rent, her car, anything. She has a job, David. A good one, thanks to me. She can figure it out. Her salary covers her own small bills, maybe. Not a multi-million-dollar house payment or a luxury car lease. You know that. You set her up for this lifestyle. And she enjoyed every minute of it, I shot back. Now she gets to experience what life is like without my generosity. Maybe she'll learn some appreciation. Liam, this isn't about appreciation. This is about control. And it's going to make you look like an absolute monster. Everyone at that gala saw you walk out. They all know you are the one with the money. This isn't going to end well for your reputation. His words pricked at me, but I pushed them away. My reputation? What about my dignity? My reputation is the least of my concerns right now. I am not changing my mind. Other calls came in. Some friends tried to mediate. Some were clearly on Sarah's side. Some seemed to understand my anger, but still thought my reaction was too harsh. I dismissed them all. I was firm. This was my decision, and I wasn't backing down. Meanwhile, Sarah was apparently struggling. Lily told me she had gone to her work bank account, only to find a meager sum. Her direct deposits from her salary had just started, but not enough to cover the immediate bills. She hadn't even realized how little she had accumulated of her own money, because everything went through my accounts. She couldn't even afford her car payment. She had to take an Uber to work. She was trying to figure out how to access her 401k, but that would take time. Part of me felt a cold satisfaction. This was the lesson. This was the lesson. This was the consequence. But another, smaller part started to feel something else, a flicker of discomfort. Seeing her reduced to such a vulnerable state, even from afar, knowing she was genuinely panicked about basic necessities was unsettling. But I quickly suppressed it. She did this to herself. She chose to disrespect me. She chose to be reliant. This was just the outcome. The struggle intensified. Sarah had to take out a small personal loan from her bank just to cover immediate expenses. She was desperate. She started looking for a second job. Her work performance was apparently slipping too, as she was constantly stressed and distracted. Mark, the work husband, was reportedly trying to help her out, lending her money for Ubers, bringing her lunch. That news, relayed by a mutual acquaintance, only solidified my resolve. Of course, Mark would step in. He was the hero she always wanted. Let him be. I kept my distance. I focused on work, on my own life, but the house felt too big, too quiet. The silence was deafening. I found myself pacing the empty rooms, remembering the laughter, the life that used to fill them, the life I had so abruptly extinguished. It was a strange mix of vindication and something else, something heavy, something akin to loneliness. But I refused to acknowledge it. This was necessary. This was right. She made her bed. Now she had to lie in it, or rather, in Lily's spare bedroom. The story, as David predicted, became public. Not public, like in the news, but public enough among our shared social circles. Whispers followed me at events. Awkward silences descended when I entered a room. Friends who used to enthusiastically greet me now offered curt nods, if anything. My reputation, which I had built meticulously over years, through shrewd business deals and carefully curated philanthropy, was taking a hit. I heard snippets of conversations. Did you hear about Liam and Sarah? He cut her off completely. Yeah, because she thanked her work friend at a gala. Can you believe it? He's a total control freak. She's literally got nothing, staying with Lily. It's disgusting. It stung. I tried to ignore it, to project an air of indifference. Let them talk. They didn't understand. They didn't see what I saw. They didn't feel the sting of betrayal. They didn't see how she had taken everything for granted. But the isolation was real. Invitations to social gatherings dwindled. Business associates, always friendly before, were now coolly professional. A few even cancelled potential deals, citing changing circumstances or conflicting priorities. I knew what they meant. No one wanted to be associated with the guy who financially abused his girlfriend. My private life was equally bleak. The house, once filled with her laughter, her art, her vibrant presence, was now a tomb. Every corner held a memory. The studio, her easels still standing, canvases half finished, collected dust. Her scent still lingered in the bedroom, a ghost of a perfume. I found myself wandering through the rooms at night, restless, unable to sleep. I'd rationalize my actions as reclaiming dignity, as teaching a lesson. But what kind of lesson was this? And for whom? I had a brief moment of almost reaching out, of wondering if I'd gone too far. But then the image of her on that stage, her eyes on Mark, his casual wink would flash in my mind, and the anger would return hard and cold. She made me do this, I told myself. She pushed me to this extreme. Meanwhile, Sarah's struggle was becoming more apparent. Lily, clearly trying to make me feel guilty, sent me a picture of Sarah working a second job, waiting tables at a casual diner downtown. Her face tired, her posture slumped. My stomach twisted. She who used to frequent five-star restaurants and never looked at a bill was now serving cheap coffee to strangers for minimum wage. She's lost a lot of weight, Lily texted, clearly aiming for maximum impact. She's constantly exhausted. She's worried about losing her apartment because her lease is ending and she can't afford the deposit for a new place, let alone the rent. I blocked Lily. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to know. It was her own fault. But the images stuck with me. Sarah, radiant at the gala compared to Sarah, serving food. The contrast was stark, horrifying. I had imagined her realizing her mistake, apologizing, perhaps even begging for my forgiveness. I had imagined a scenario where she understood the gravity of my actions, and then, perhaps, I would magnanimously offer a path to reconciliation. But she hadn't. She'd fought, then accepted her fate, and was trying to rebuild her life from scratch. Without me, that was the hardest part to swallow. She wasn't coming back. This wasn't a temporary punishment. This was an ending. And as much as I told myself it was her fault, the hollowness in my chest grew heavier each day. My own company was doing well, but even that felt empty. I had all the money in the world, but no one to share it with, no one to impress. My grand gestures had led to this. My need for control, or perhaps my need for recognition, had shattered everything. I started drinking more. My focus at work wavered. I found myself staring blankly at spreadsheets, thinking not of profits and losses, but of Sarah's face when I told her I'd cancelled her cards. The shock, the disbelief, the utter devastation. I had wanted to hurt her, yes, to make her understand the depth of my anger, but I hadn't anticipated this. I hadn't anticipated turning her entire life upside down, nor the ripple effect it would have on mine. It was a Pyrrhic victory, I had won the battle, but lost the war. And the silence in my $1,000,000 house was the loudest sound of all. It screamed of what I had lost and what I had become. The weeks turned into months. The anger, once a raging fire, had slowly embers down into a dull, persistent ache. The satisfaction I'd felt from cancelling the cards was long gone, replaced by a gnawing emptiness. I still maintained to anyone who would listen, and fewer would, that my actions were justified. But deep down the certainty was eroding. I found myself replaying the gala night, her speech, her eyes on Mark. His wink. Was it really as malicious as I'd perceived? Or was my own insecurity, my need for external validation, twisting it into something it wasn't? I remembered her arguments. It was a figure of speech. He's gay. I was just thanking someone who helped me with the charity work. I dismissed them then, but now, alone in my silent house, they echoed with a disturbing clarity. What if she was telling the truth? What if it truly was an innocent mistake, blown out of proportion by my own bruised ego? I thought about the financial dependence. I had always seen myself as generous, providing. But had I, perhaps unintentionally, created a gilded cage for her? Had I stripped away her autonomy by making her financially reliant on me? I had certainly never asked her to stop working or to spend less. But I had fostered an environment where she didn't need to worry about much. And when someone doesn't need to worry, they stop thinking about it. They stop building their own safety net. And then I ripped that net away, violently, without warning. The words she used came back to me. Emotional abuse, financial abuse. You are trying to control me. At the time, I dismissed them as hyperbole, as an angry outburst. But now they felt chillingly accurate. I had controlled her. I had manipulated her life, albeit perhaps subtly at first through my provision. And then when I felt disrespected, I had used that control as a weapon. I realized I wasn't just angry at Sarah. I was angry at myself. Angry that I had allowed myself to become so consumed by pride and insecurity. Angry that I hadn't communicated my feelings earlier, more clearly before it escalated. Angry that I had chosen such a destructive path. I drove past her old apartment building, the quirky one downtown, where she lived when we first met. It was small, but it was hers. She paid her own rent. She rode her bicycle. She was fiercely independent. I had taken that away from her piece by piece, cloaking it in luxury and comfort. And in doing so, I had taken away a part of her spirit too. And then I had punished her for it. I missed her. Not just her presence, but the version of myself I was when I was with her. The man who felt important, yes, but also loved, cherished. The man who enjoyed providing, who felt fulfilled by making her happy. That man was gone, replaced by this bitter, isolated individual, who was universally judged, and who increasingly was judging himself. I started reaching out to some of the friends I'd alienated. David answered, but his tone was guarded. He told me Sarah was slowly getting back on her feet. She was working 2 jobs, saving every penny. Mark, the work husband, had indeed helped her out, lending her money for a new deposit on a small apartment, helping her move, driving her around until she could sort out her car situation. He was her friend, a real friend, not a replacement for me, but a genuine source of support in her darkest hour. The man I had targeted as my rival was simply a decent human being. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. Mark wasn't a threat. He was just a colleague, a friend. I had created a villain where there was none, all because of my own inability to handle a perceived slight. My grand gesture of revenge was based on a misunderstanding, fueled by my own insecurities. And the heartbreaking part, Sarah wasn't coming back. She wouldn't. I had burned that bridge to ash. I hadn't just cancelled her credit cards, I had cancelled our future. And the deeper I dove into this self-reflection, the more I understood that the person who truly deserved the deepest heartbreak wasn't her, but me. 'Cause I was the one who had destroyed something beautiful, not out of malice, but out of a profound and misguided sense of wounded pride. I had become the monster she accused me of being. The realization that I was the villain of my own story was a bitter pill to swallow. It didn't happen overnight, but slowly, painfully, over months of isolation and self-reflection. The anger dissipated completely, leaving only regret and a heavy sense of loss. My life continued. Technically, my businesses thrived. The money kept flowing, but it meant nothing. My grand house felt like a gilded cage, trapping me in my own self-made misery. Every luxury item I owned, every piece of art I'd collected, served as a stark reminder of what I'd lost. Genuine connection, love, and a shred of my own humanity. I tried to apologize to Sarah. I called her, but she didn't answer. I texted a long, rambling message, expressing remorse, admitting my insecurities, taking full responsibility. No reply. I tried to send her a certified letter, a formal apology, even offering financial restitution to help her get back on her feet more quickly. My lawyer advised against it, saying it could be seen as an admission of fault if she decided to pursue a legal case, but I didn't care anymore. The letter came back marked refused. She wanted nothing to do with me. And I couldn't blame her. I had broken her. Not physically, but her sense of security, her trust, her very foundation. I had taken everything she had and then, like a cruel overlord, punished her for accepting it. I heard snippets about her life from mutual acquaintances. She had found a new, smaller apartment, purely on her own income. She had sold her luxury car, the one I'd bought her, and bought a used, reliable one. She was still working 2 jobs relentlessly, trying to rebuild her savings. Mark was still in her life, a steady, supportive presence. He wasn't the enemy. He was the friend I should have been. Her art, the thing I had once encouraged her to pursue, was now her escape, her therapy. She started posting her work online, small pieces, full of raw emotion. I would look at them, silently, late at night, seeing the pain and resilience in every brushstroke. It broke my heart all over again, knowing I was the cause of that pain. My own social circle completely evaporated. The few remaining friends eventually drifted away, tired of my self-pity and my inability to move on. My reputation was in tatters. I was the cautionary tale, the rich jerk who couldn't handle a joke. I sold the house. It was too big, too empty, too full of ghosts. I moved into a smaller, modern apartment downtown. It felt more like the old me, the man before all the overwhelming wealth, the man who was driven by ambition, not by a desperate need for control or validation. But the joy was gone. The ambition felt hollow. Sometimes, I wonder what would have happened if I had just swallowed my pride that night. If I had simply pulled her aside and expressed my feelings calmly. If I had said, "Hey, that work husband comment stung. It made me feel unappreciated." What if I had been mature, communicative, and secure, but I wasn't? I was a man consumed by ego and insecurity, cloaked in wealth. And I made a snap decision that irrevocably changed 2 lives. Hers for the worse in the short term, but perhaps for the better in the long run, as she learned self-reliance and strength she never knew she possessed. and mine, for the worse, perhaps permanently. The heartbreak wasn't hers alone. It was mine too. The heartbreak of recognizing the monster I'd become. The heartbreak of knowing I had destroyed the one good, pure thing in my life, all because of a perceived slight. The heartbreak of living with the consequences. Alone, forever haunted by the memory of a woman I once loved and the man I used to be. I had won the battle but lost everything that truly mattered. And that, I realized, was the cruelest victory of all.